about it. The point is, I have two kids, and I keep receiving from the school about two things. The first thing is about teaching my kids about human development and sexual relationship and all of these things. And the other thing is what I received 2 days ago. The school wants to teach, and it's up to me if I accept or not, teach my kid about how to avoid depression and how to understand suicide and try to avoid committing suicide, and talk about these issues to school or experts. Actually, this is the first time I have this experience, and since I didn't study my high school and elementary school in the US, I don't have that experience in these issues. So if Dr. Ghanouchi, if you have experience, and I'm sure you do, would you please give us some tips or explain that to us from your perspective?
Yeah, that's Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulullah. That's the challenge that parents are facing here, especially Muslim parents, but other parents too. This is a very diverse society, and there are people who also have some values and some religious principles that cause some restrictions. So the good thing is that there is some margin or some freedom for parents here to make some decisions. So it's not like everything is imposed. On the other hand, we have to distinguish between, first of all, we should never think that our children should get exactly the same education that we got, those of us who came from different country and different culture. For many reasons. That's one, because it's a different culture, but also because that education system is not ideal. The one that we graduated from has a lot of items that are missing. And it is causing a lot of problems. The lack of sexual education is causing a lot of problems in Muslim families. Because it was done, either was not done at all, or wasn't done properly. So so we have to know where to draw the line. It's not a wholesale approach, like accepting everything or rejecting everything. Whatever it is beneficial. We should not object to it, and whatever is not needed or can confuse children or teach them something that runs against principles or values, etc., that's where we should draw the line. I'm not aware exactly about specific subjects or topics, because I mean my children are grown up, so I'm not following exactly what is being presented now, or what's the exact topics that are being discussed. But in general, the general rule is whatever is beneficial. So we shouldn't use our education as a reference, like anything that we did not learn ourselves, our children should not learn, because again, wasn't really ideal, was missing a lot of things. At the same time, we should take advantage of the freedom that is there to make decisions or to choose. It's going to take some efforts from parents, maybe community in general, or Islamic Center should dedicate some efforts in this, because some expertise may be available for the community, may not be available in every family. for people to be like counseling parents. A lot of services are missing in our Islamic centers in general. Family counseling, youth counseling, and this is one of them. Might be like some people who are experts, Muslim experts in education, that they can review things like this and they can issue some brochures, some guidelines, and then you can take a question, specific question, like that what you received from the school, what you actually have received from the school, you can take it to them and say, what do you think? What do you recommend? What's your advice here? So meanwhile, until that is available, until our community realize that having an Islamic center or even an Islamic school is not enough in community development, and we still have a long way to go, and a lot of services should be provided that are missing. Unfortunately, a lot of time, the only thing that we can think of and commit money to is buildings, but we don't, we neglect these things that are more important than buildings, actually. So until that happens, until our communities start to be aware of this and start working on providing these needed services for the community, and change the idea that that has been dominant for so long, that we think of ourselves as an immigrant community, and because we are an immigrant community, all what we need is a mosque and then a school, whether it is a weekend school or a full-time school. And if we have those, then we are in good shape. And that has, I've been saying this for so many years, or for a few decades now, that that's not true. There are a lot more facilities that are needed, a lot of more services are needed if we want really this community to be well served, and family and people of all ages, all age categories to be served, and their needs to be fulfilled. So take advantage of that and be more involved in the education of your children, and join with others, whether it's Muslim parents in that school or other people who share the same concern, because we found out that there are other communities who are much more involved than Muslims in other faith communities, much more involved than Muslims in this topics, and they go and attend school district board meetings and voice their opinion and object to some things that some other people are trying to introduce. So that's the general recommendation. It's get more involved, take it seriously. I mean, those communication that you get from the school, read them carefully, and go and ask. Even before the community provides something well structured, you can go to the Islamic Center and ask if there are Muslim educators, and you can have a more specific discussion with them, and you can get better advice about specific topics.
Jazakallah khairan. Very, very, very good point that that we need to be more involved. You're right. Involved with the school and involved with the community, and ask about. Remind me about some parents that I'm going to go and ask them because they have their kids in the same school, and maybe I can learn from their experience, and we can share our experiences as well.
Mm-hmm. And also we can have some collective efforts that will have more weight. If you go by yourself, it's different than if you go like a group of parents and say, we have a concern, serious concern about this. So start with the Muslim parents in the same school, but then I'm sure you're going to find also other parents from other faith communities who have also very similar concerns.
Assalamu alaikum. Brother Nadal, I want to ask you, so I live in Fredericksburg. It's more southern than Northern Virginia. And so maybe it has to do with the school district. I don't know. But when you find out about these things, do the schools send any paperwork with your children at home? Or is this all communicated like verbally to them in school? Because I'm not getting anything, about that. And it could be because um, maybe the area I live in is more, conservative. So can you tell me how it's happening in your area?
Absolutely, Brother Ayman. This is a very good question. I live in Springfield, Fairfax, and actually they sent us kind of three, and they do this every year. They sent us like 3-4 pages with all description, and then they point the things that they're gonna teach. They would say first, this is the link that you can go and search and look at the curriculum, and they provided the points of the curriculum in that the envelope, the letters they provided. So they put number 1, we're going to teach this and that. Number 2, number 3, let's say number 10, and they would say, if you want to opt your child from any of them, just mark it, and we're gonna we will not teach your kids this point or that point. And they did this last year. And last year was only about general information about a human body parts and all of these things. That was fine. But this year, my son is in the middle school. I received more described, more detailed papers teaching. They're gonna teach him about. I'm sorry to say that, but this about sexual relationship, about oral sexual better than full sexual with your, let's say a friend or something. Very, very deep, very sometimes unnecessary things. And then three and that like I need to select what I need him to attend and what not. And 3 days ago, I received another letter saying that we're going to teach. There's a class about committing suicide and depression. What you should do if you have a depression, to whom you need to talk, if you feel that you're going to commit suicide, to whom you need to talk, and how to avoid that. So answering your question, I know I went in detail, but I just wanted to tell you what I received, so you can ask the school, and I can send you the link if you want as well, because I searched it myself. So these are the 2 letters, the type of letters I received from my school. I hope I answered this question, Brother Ayman.
Yes, you did. Jazakallah khair. I'll be I'll be on the lookout, but I haven't received anything. I also talked to my kids. Thank you for bringing up the topic. Maybe it's discussed, verbally with them. But again, it could be that this type of, I guess, education, if you want to call it that, hasn't reached my area because we're a little, the community here is a little bit more conservative.
How old are your kids, Brother Ayman?
So I have one in high school, just started, another one in middle school, and another one in elementary.
Oh, okay. I think the best practice maybe is to talk with them and ask them if they had any classes like these classes in the past.
So, Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم.
I think we have Brother Muhammad back online. You have a better connection now, Brother Muhammad?
I'm still in the car, but I don't know when I was disconnected. So did I answer your question about the church?
You were disconnected probably halfway. You were talking about Sufism and implementation. I guess they were using it in the church or singing about it. And then you brought up a good point about people, maybe the younger generation leaving Islam, Ilhad. Can you touch on that? Then you started to cut out.
Okay, so I don't want to take long, but there is the increasing number of people, not maybe young, all ages, start thinking, everything is open these days with the social media and all that. And lots of answers we give, not myself, but we give as an institution or Islamic traditional institutions, doesn't convince people anymore. So it's, we discussed last class about different understanding, and Dr. Sohail always bring the idea of we have to do a reset, or there is something wrong in the introduction or understanding of Islam. So I'm adding to that point is, if we insist on not changing or not, if we kept the denial process, we will lose a lot. That's my point.
Well, it's and I've been saying this for quite some time now. If we gonna continue business as usual, this is something that we usually don't do, which is to foresee the future. If you start on a certain path, or if you're going in a certain path, or if you're going down, decline, you have to start thinking about where this is heading. You can't be living like every moment, that's it right now, and then you cannot be in denial. Now, we are always in denial. That's how we face our problems. And when we cannot deny them anymore, we justify them. And when we cannot justify them, no longer justify them, then we patch them. But we don't do the only thing that we're supposed to do, which is to accept responsibility, find out the root causes, and resolve it. We don't do that. And also we still, I don't know, we have this wishful thinking that maybe the wrong path or wrong start can lead to good conclusion or good results. It can't, it doesn't. Never did, never will. So we're gonna have to wake up and start thinking realistically that if you see the curve is going down, you're gonna hit the ground. There is no if and then about it. The general trend in the Muslim world is going down in all aspects. Education, economy, people's manners, character, socially, you name it. It's going down. It's a free falling. And one aspect of this, which we have been discussing extensively and repeatedly, that if we're going to continue presenting young Muslims and future generations the existing versions of Islam, we are failing, and we're going to fail miserably to sell those versions of Islam to future generations. It's a very sad reality, but we have to accept it. Those versions of Islam, whether it is the traditional, the Azhar style and the traditional, the Sufi, the political Islam, the whatever, all the versions that you see, they're not convincing. Now some of us have swallowed these because we were like captive audience, and we were bombarded basically from home, from the school, from the neighbors, neighborhood, and then we accepted it. But that's not the case for these generations. I mean, these generations, they have access to information. They are raised much more independently. They become very independent very early on, with strong opinions. And so that approach, which is to force something that is not very convincing, to force it on people, is not going to work. And also, and many of us, the way we were raised, we didn't have a lot of options. So that helped us accepting it. But you're dealing with a very different generations, those who ask questions, those who have opinions, those who have independent personalities, independent thinking. So if you're going to use the same tools that your parents have used with you, they're not going to work. I mean, you're going to have some successes here and there, but that's going to be the exceptions. The general trend will be, it's going to be, we're going to fail because it's not convincing. Many of us, if we were presented this version of Islam, probably would not have accepted it. It's not convincing. It's a lot of time creates more confusion, creates some tension inside. It's not inspiring. It's not motivating. It's not very, there isn't a lot of good examples to show, like success stories, like role models, like, and I think one time a young brother asked his parents here, they say, well, why I never heard a Muslim did something like in science or did, well, why we don't hear that? Why there isn't, with the only time there is a Muslim talking about on TV is when there is a terrorist attack, or why we never seen some again role models or success stories, etc. So it's not hopeless. It's very bad, but it's not hopeless. And the more we delay accepting, because accepting the brutal reality is just the first step. That at least puts you on the right track. And then finding out the root causes, that's a different step. Then coming up with solutions and implementing them, and all of them, they're going to be painful, because what the damage that happened over centuries is not going to be fixed in days or weeks, and there are no easy solutions or quick solutions. That's what people keep asking. Whenever you talk about the reality, say, can you give us the solutions? Still, there are people, they're still dreaming that there can be some easy prescription that you implement and you get out of it. So the sooner we accept that, as Brother Muhammad mentioned, the need for a reset, the need for fresh start, the need that starts first with accepting the brutal facts or reality that the version that Islam reached us through centuries of stagnation and oppression that caused a lot of mutilations. Centuries of stagnation, no ijtihad. Until now, people, they gather and they rely on the tafsir and the books that were written centuries ago. So through centuries of stagnation and oppression, of course, in the environment of oppression and totalitarian regimes, you don't expect people to thrive. It never happened. So that caused a lot of mutilation, tashawwuh, mutilation and twisting to the version of Islam. And then it reached a point where it became beyond repair. And we have seen the last attempt by contemporary Islamic movement, like almost centuries ago, that started, and it led nowhere in. Why? Because it turns out that it was also a patchwork. It did not get to the bottom. It didn't get to the roots. What happened is we took that Muslim personality, that Muslim individual, man or woman, with all the damage that happened to their mindset and to their personality and to their thinking, etc. And all what we have done is we added a layer of like praying. If the person was drinking, then stop drinking. No for adultery, and then fasting, and then maybe every now and then some Quran and some Islamic literature or halaqah or etc. And then if she's a woman, then add the hijab. But below that, the damage is still there. The damage is still there. So we ended up with mosques full, hijab is everywhere, a lot of Islamic appearances, a lot of Islamic activities, a lot of Islamic organization, a lot of Islamic conventions and channels and sites and etc. But nothing has changed. Not much has changed. There are some numbers, by the way, even like, for example, divorce rate in some Muslim countries, very alarming. And now Brother Muhammad raising this trend to atheism. By the way, atheism, if there are any statistics about atheism in Muslim countries, it's an underestimation, because very few people or small number of people who come out and say, I'm atheist. The biggest problem is the de facto atheist, is the one who says, I don't know, I don't care. That's now major trend among young Muslims in the Muslim world. Doesn't say that I don't believe in Allah, but it is a de facto amr waqa. De facto atheism is someone who has no clue about religion and don't care about it anymore, and has no self-restraint whatsoever. The word haram or the word da'ib, the word is this is wrong or this is haram, means nothing for them anymore. That's the more serious trend. And I'm not worried a lot about the segment, even though it is increasing and it's bad. But the segment of people who say, no, I'm atheist, I have a doubt about the existing of Allah, because that's not the major part. The major segment is the ones who have no clue. There are some TV, not shows, but people went into the streets and asking people some very basic questions in Islamic countries and Arab countries. Like, for example, recite Fatiha, or what is Surah Ikhlas, or what is this very basic information. And you will be alarmed about young men and women saying, I don't know, I'm not sure, or they start and then they could not finish. So that's even more alarming. And yet we're still in denial. We're still using the same approach. We're still thinking that I can protect my children in terms of isolating them completely, and then I can raise them. And if I succeed to raise my children as a good Muslim, quote unquote, good Muslim with the current versions of Islam, then I don't care about what's happening in this society. It's very serious. The way Muslim family is being built and managed is not promising at all. We still have haphazard marriage and family managed haphazardly, and people get married with no prior education whatsoever about anything, and then they have no clue about how to raise children, and then they leave them for their smart devices which basically are playing bigger role nowadays than parents. And then I don't know where we're going with this, and I don't know when are we going to see a solid group of people who say, you know what, this is going nowhere, enough is enough. It's about time to change course. It's about time to have that reset or that fresh start. get together and try to understand what happened, why we ended up in this situation, the questions that we raised last time, why we ended up in this situation, why nations all over the world are progressing and changing their situation, and only Muslims are lagging behind, why this great deen that created great success story in the worst conditions that you can think of is producing this mediocre result now and mediocre situation. And even the two arguments that we had failed miserably, and yet we are yet to wake up. For a long time, we were told, and we were under the impression that we have two problems. If they are fixed, then everything is going to be fixed. If people come back to Islam, and if those oppressive regimes are gone. We have lived to see people coming back to Islam, the Islam, the superficial. And we have lived to see regimes toppled, those oppressive regimes, and nothing has changed. If that is not enough for us to wake up, that yes, you lived decades with a diagnosis, turns out to be wrong. Turns out that it's not bringing people to that version of Islam that is going to fix anything. And it is not removing those governments or those regimes that's going to fix anything. Some people in my generation were thinking that if one day you wake up and there is no Gaddafi, or there is no Assad, or there is no Mubarak, or there is no Ben Ali, then things are going to be very rosy. We lived to see those are gone, and things did not become rosy at all. Yeah. And also people before us and people in our generation that's the prevalent understanding, that if we can just get women to wear hijab and bring people to the mosques and having this mosques full and bigger mosques and get more people in it, etc., and then things will be fixed. You can see nowadays many Muslim countries, so many mosques were built and huge. By the way, even this trend now is reversing. So even that patchwork that we have done, it has expired. Its effect has expired, and I'm being told that even in some Muslim countries, less and less people are attending and less and less people are practicing. It became noticeable, or especially over the last few years. But whether that, even if that continue, and I said it in Jumu'ah more than once, I said, if the 1.5 billion Muslims in the world become practicing tomorrow, and you don't see any alcohol or any adultery or anything in Muslim countries, nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. And they have done it. In some countries, they have done it. In Afghanistan, etc., they closed these things and they forced hijab and etc. But what happened? Nothing happened. Nothing has changed. So it is about time to accept enough denial, accept that it's a very deep, damage is very deep. It's not superficial. It's about time to abandon all those futile approaches that we have been using for quite some time and adopt the right thing, the Islamic approach, which is accept responsibility for what happened, stop excuses, stop denial, stop scapegoating, stop blaming, stop complaining, accept responsibility for what happened, and accept responsibility for changing it. And once after you do that, then you start into the right path, which is diagnosis and real solutions, even if they are painful, even if they're going to take long, but once, at least if we are on the right track and moving even slowly or with a reasonable speed, then inshallah we'll get there. But as long we are lost. And I say nowadays, Muslims, they are in a state of loss. تيه. قال فإن محرمة عليهم 40 سنة يتيهون في الأرض. The people are lost, confused, lost. They don't know where they are. They don't know where they're heading. They don't know, they have nothing. And their destiny, it's not in their hand. It's being decided somewhere else. So unless we accept the fact that, and then we try to find a starting point, the right starting point, that reset or fresh start, and start our journey of rediscovering our faith and implementing it, and we'll see and hold ourselves accountable for results. It's not true that no, results are not in our hands. Results are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a kalimatu haqq urida biha batil. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the disposer of all affairs, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ما أصابك من حسنة فمن الله وما أصابك من سيئة فمن نفسك قل هو من عند أنفسكم فبما كسبت أيديكم ما أصابكم مصيبة فبما كسبت أيديكم. Whatever happens to you is your own doing. So a lot of these misconceptions, tawakkul, that people don't do their part and then say Allah will take care of it. Why? Because we are Muslims, so Allah will do things for us. Just show me where in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you don't need to do anything, I will do everything for you. Where? One time I was giving a khutbah and I was explaining this in Tansurullah yansurkum, that if you support the cause of Allah, Allah will support you. And the brother came after Jummah and said, Jazakallahu khairan, you clarified something that has been confusing me for so long. I said, what? He said, so the help from Allah is conditional. I said, yes, it is conditional. That's now, it helps me understanding a lot, because I keep asking myself why we are Muslims and we are in this terrible situation and we're not getting the help. So you're telling us that help from Allah is conditional. I said, yes, it is conditional. And unless you do everything you can, that help is not going to kick in.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I want to go back to the Nidal point in the beginning of the session.
Mm-hmm.
I like to tell him, I asked myself 30 years ago, same question he asked today. In the beginning, option my kids out, option in, After that, I didn't bother to read the letters I am receiving the schools, because we don't have alternative. But it makes any difference, the kids, if the school didn't teach him that, the other kids, they will teach him that, This is what happened with us in the Middle East. We don't have any sex program, we don't have anything. We learned everything from the bad boys, If we don't have a strong community here, nothing will be changed,
I agree. And practically, Brother Nidal and others, Ayman and anybody who, especially who have children in high school, middle school, or elementary school, I strongly recommend that you engage the community, because you go to the leadership of the Islamic centers and start an initiative, because I know unfortunately sometimes we're still under that impression that there is a community that's going to do things. The community is you. And if you don't take initiative or you don't raise issues and put some pressure, nothing is going to happen. So I strongly recommend that parents will go and meet with leadership of Islamic Center, say, why don't we have let's start with some sort of education council in the Islamic Center, a group of educators who can counsel us on these things. And then leading, as Brother Abdullah said, leading to even provide alternative at one time, that these things will, when we say no, then we know that we can bring our children to the Islamic center and or the Islamic school, even if they're not attending that Islamic school, but they can get the same education in proper way, and by people who are experts also. It's not by anybody from the mosque or imam would be teaching anything. But so many things, they grow up, many things start very small, start with the very baby steps. So start with those small steps, engage leadership of the Islamic Center, say, we are parents, sometimes we have questions and we're not getting help. Can we start in the Islamic Center an educational committee or counseling that they will dedicate some time for us when parents can come and meet them and discuss with them these issues. It can start as volunteering in the beginning. Later on, some Islamic centers, mashallah, they have a lot of money. They can even hire a full-timer educational counselor or something. And I've been advocating for educational counselor, youth counselors, family counselor. Unfortunately, our community has, when they reached that level of having an Islamic center and Islamic school, they thought they're already there, which is something that we have done in our history. A lot of time, we relax our efforts and think that mission is accomplished as soon as we achieve anything, as soon as we achieve the first accomplishment. Unfortunately, we don't have leadership in place to say, no, don't. Let's continue to be mobilized, because now we're moving to the next level. We have a higher challenge now that we're going to tackle. So we allow our people to demobilize and get relaxed. Maybe that's a good practical point, starting point. Hopefully it can lead somewhere. And if it succeeds in one Islamic center, it can be really easily generalized. Is basically saying why every parent is facing this challenge by themselves. Why don't we face it collectively? And why don't we gather the resources that are there? Every Islamic center has definitely a number of educators attending it or members of it, and they can do that, especially those Islamic centers that have an Islamic school attached to them, whether it is full-time or even weekend school.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Anushi. I think we should, those of us that live in different communities, should at least contact the mosques around us and ask them to have this as like a monthly program at least, or where the parents can meet with the imam on a monthly basis and ask these questions.
It's not the imam. The questions about school need educators, not imam. And every community has educators, has people who teach in public schools or in the Islamic schools or have some educational expertise.
Actually, what happened to me, I asked the imam of our neighborhood masjid, and he's imam, as Dr. Ghannouchi said. So I talked to him about this issue briefly, and he said, so since my son is attending kind of daily school in that masjid, it's a very small masjid, he said, no need to send him to these classes. We're gonna teach him these things in a very proper and Islamic way. But again, the point is, first, he is an imam. He is not an educator. So he's gonna teach my kids, yes, from Islamic way, but still this is what I feel, it lacks the kind of educational perspective that my son really needs in his life in America. And the second thing, he said that we're gonna teach him, but he doesn't have a curriculum right now to teach him. And he said we're gonna touch on these things while we are teaching him. So I'm not sure if he or his team will be doing that. I'm not doubting his efforts, but there is nothing clear in front of me. That's why keep asking. I didn't settle down for this advice because I don't see any kind of proper plan from experts to tackle this issue.
No, these things are not are beyond the capacity of small mosques. This is needs big Islamic center with the resources, and even if you don't have an Islamic center close to it, this is like once a week, so it is worth it. So I recommend that those, if you can go like to Adam Center, maybe Dar al-Hijra, the big Islamic centers that have staff, they have employees, they have resources, and they have large community, and especially if they have school attached with them, so they definitely have educators. I think that's where you need to start. So even if you are not close to these large Islamic centers, it's worth to go to them, and as Brother Ayman mentioned, to start some sort of weekly meeting or program with parents who don't have their children in Islamic school, but who are facing this challenge, and they need this help for the Islamic Center to arrange a program where they can get the better advice. And then we start with that, and then eventually, hopefully, this will translate into an alternative, providing an alternative to teach these things in those centers, and make it available to everybody, because only a small segment of the community have their children in Islamic schools. The majority, they have their children in public schools. So make this available open to the whole community, so that they can benefit, first of all, from an advice of experts. That's a good starting point. Like, you take the material that you receive from school and you discuss it with an expert. That should be an easy step, but then you keep pushing it and saying, let's have a plan, so that sooner rather than later, this translates into alternative, not only counseling parents what their children should learn or not, but the things that we are not sure they're going to learn it properly, then we can teach them, we can provide an alternative to it. And believe me, it's not difficult for those Islamic centers, large Islamic centers. They have lots of resources. This should not be difficult at all to start, and even to have a department or a committee, even with the full-timers who will be doing this. And that's if you raise the awareness, if you push, they will respond. But other than that, if they don't hear from the community, they think that everything is fine, that whatever services are being provided are enough. So take the initiative, and I'm sure they will respond, because the resources are there, expertise is there, financial resources is there. Now, what is missing is the leadership and the vision. So if it is not coming from leadership and vision, it should come from members of the community who will start or take an initiative, and don't wait.
We'll do that, inshallah. I know people in Adams. I'm going to reach out to them after our meeting, and you never know. Maybe they have something. Maybe they have a small department.
Maybe. Yeah, find out what is available and start, and reach out also to the parents, especially start with the parents in the Islamic school. A lot of things, they start small, have some sort of group, and then try everybody knows somebody else in other school, then expand it, etc. Yeah. It's all about finding out what is available and also taking initiatives.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be easy for us because we are the product of societies where the government does everything. So we're not used to this. We're not used to be involved in the education of our children. We are not used to anybody to ask our opinion about anything. We are not used to have any room to do anything. And we were not used to run our own affairs. It's very different here. And we need to change that mindset that here, there is no government that's gonna do everything. It's you. You have the right and you have the opportunity to be involved in education of your children, and then even in the way your community is being managed, by voicing your opinion, asking questions, taking initiatives, etc.
Yes, let me just add something about this subject.
Mhm.
2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with the school board member. He's from our community. And he's running again. He won that term and he's running again. I mean, we can start, in this country, there is each community has its own government. So school board is a good place to start from. And we met with him and it was a big meeting. I mean, our support to him was conditional. The family, parents asked him about important questions about what's your, what do you say about this and that, and especially about, social issues with kids. And he was like, he said, what is he voting for, or he is against, if either he is with or against. And, he's one of the community and he's supposed to do what the community wants. So I guess attending school board meetings, be part of it, be aware of what's happening there, that's a good start. In addition to that, if you need any help with Adams, I'm continuous volunteer at Adams, various committees. So if you need, I can connect you to, I'm talking to Brother Nidal if he needs any help. Just reach out to me. I can try to help.
Great. Yeah, I mean, there are a number of things. It's just the dots are not connected in this community. The resources are there, the opportunities are there, the expertise, but it just, why? Because again, the leadership void or vacuum and the lack of big vision that is rallying the community, that is what is missing. But the pieces are there. The pieces of the puzzles are there. Yeah. So if it is not happening the way usually it happens, which is leadership with a vision, plugging people in and connecting people and connecting the dots, the resources and the expertise and the opportunities, etc., then the only way it's going to come is by individuals' initiatives. And you start by asking these questions. We found out, Brother Muhammad, that there is a Muslim member of the school board, and there was a meeting already took place, and he can connect you with the people in Adam, and this issue can take a momentum of its own. I mean, you can go there, especially with other parents, and meet with the people of Adam and see what is available and what else can be done.
It would be good, brother. It would be good, brother Nidal and Muhammad, if you guys can pursue this this week and let us know next week at the beginning of the lecture. That way we get some ideas and we could have something basically something is set up at Adams or other mosques. We could benefit from it because we all live in different communities. And we could pursue the same process.
Inshallah. Brother Muhammad, I sent you here a personal chat, my phone number. So let's connect after the meeting, and I'll send you the documents that I received, and let's take it to the next level.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think we have a little bit of time left, maybe 10, 15 minutes. If anyone has a small topic question, please feel free.
All right, if there are
Yeah.
questions, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, last time we discussed, there was some questions about Sunnah, and some brothers maybe thought we are going too far, or something about we are ignoring or disrespecting the books of Sahih Bukhari or something. It's not that. It's the, you have to have some, I would say, method or measurements or something, how to deal with this stuff. We know Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah protected the Quran, and we cannot, I mean, we are not discussing that, but for hadith, there is sometimes we have to use, if hadith contradicts Quran, and it happens. And what happened in the history, some scholars did not take that specific hadith. And the school of Imam Malik and the school of Abu Hanifa is full of that examples. But later, there was like a dominant school of thought in in our Islamic life and history, where that school of thinking, or like not criticizing, scrutinizing the text itself, يعني المتن, متن الحديث, not the how it reached us. That's the main thing. I mean, it could be reached us in a good, correct, or يعني صحيح, but they did not look into the meaning of that hadith. I mean, sometimes this hadith can be contradicting Quran, contradicting reality, contradicting science. I mean, I understand maybe 500 years ago, science wasn't that big and science wasn't there in life. But now, if somebody read the hadith that says, when the sun set, it goes and tasjudu fi al-arsh al-Rahman. I mean, I can understand that hadith is either it's metaphoric or it contradicts science, because we know where sun goes. It doesn't go anywhere. It stays there. The earth moves around the sun. And there's a lot of hadith like that. There's a hadith, I mean, when people read the hadith that says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sits on a chair, the arsh, and Sayyidina Muhammad will hold, astaghfirullah, the hands of Allah and make him sit next to him at Yawm al-Qiyamah. I mean, this hadith contradicts our understanding of al-khalq, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the creator of everything. How come a creator be part of his creation? This is a major thing. When people these days read that and say, what's this? This is khurafa, this is not real things, or this is against reality. So we have to use this measurements ourselves. We don't have to wait for a sheikh. I know, I mean, there is limits and there is usul, or there is rules to how to do this stuff, but we have to start the critical thinking. I mean, if we don't, then people will start ignoring Islam totally. Yeah, that's my group.
Yeah, جزاك الله خير, يعني very good point. The problem happened, the deviation happened is when people decided to stop the ijtihad and freeze it, so that we rely completely on what the Imam Malik and Shafi'i and Abu Hanifa and Hanbal have done. That's people that Muslim came to a point. It was out of good intention, by the way. Like many damage happened in our history out of good intention. I mean, Muslims accepted dictatorship was out of good intention. Why they accepted dictatorship? Because they have seen the civil war, the bloody wars, etc. So they wanted stability. So they went to they said, whoever they came to this conclusion that whoever established law and order, we should obey him. And that's very bad decision, even if it just come out of good intention and we understand where it's coming from, but it turns out to be a bad decision. Same thing happened with fiqh. Because we are afraid that there will be bid'ah and there will be deviation here and there, so let's stop ijtihad and keep only these for schools, and that's it. We have enough there. That's a very bad decision. Nobody has the right to do that, and Muslims should never do that. Should never freeze their understanding on a particular part of history or particular geographic area or particular context. You should never do that. Actually, what you're supposed to do is exactly the opposite. That's exactly the thing that you should never do. And we ended up with something that is frozen, and we kept transporting it through the centuries in history and from thousands of miles to different culture and different geography, and it failed miserably. And that's the problem we started with. We are failing to, they're failing to sell it in their original place because it is not relevant anymore. How about trying to sell it in a completely different context? Same thing happened with the hadith. There is a point, people, we are, unfortunately, we are very emotional people. We are very emotional and we easily go to extremes. So people, maybe out of fear of Sunnah, about the Sunnah, out of admiration of the work of Bukhari and Muslim, whatever it is the reason, it's always good intention. They came to a conclusion that if there is a hadith in Bukhari or in Bukhari and Muslim, then we have to accept it, regardless of the meaning, regardless of whether it is. Don't think about the text itself, the chain. It is in Bukhari, then it is true. That's a bad decision. It's a bad decision. You elevated a work of a human being, you elevate it to the Quran. So you're treating them equally. It's a very bad decision. Why? Because we are afraid. Now, anybody who comes and say, like Brother Muhammad said, people, because of the emotions and because they have very resistant to change, they are afraid that if we question a hadith or two or three or five or whatever in Bukhari, then the Bukhari work will collapse and the Islam will collapse. So, by the way, Islam existed for 200 or 300 years before Bukhari. Because some people, when you tell them this question, say, now how did we learn about prayers? Quran does not tell us about prayers. But people were praying before Bukhari. So it's not like there was no Islam before. So because of that emotional trend, because of that binary attitude, it's zero sum, it's either 100% or zero. No, there are people who are very reasonable. They're coming and say, the work done by Bukhari and Muslim is great, is outstanding work. But it is a human effort and it is not 100%. By the way, Bukhari rejected a lot of hadith that came through, we just mentioned last time, that there are thousands of hadith by Abu Hurairah. Bukhari rejected them. Not one, not 10. We're talking about hundreds or thousands. And then there are scholars at the time of Bukhari rejected some of his hadith. Because people at that time, they still have some free minds that they can think. Before we get this dominant version that's stagnant, that you should not think at all, you should freeze your mind, and in fiqh, you rely on the work of the four scholars, and in hadith, any hadith in Bukhari or in Bukhari and Muslim, you have to accept it. Contradicts science, contradicts Quran, contradicts, it doesn't matter. It's not even appropriate for the Prophet to say this or to do that. It doesn't matter. If it is in Bukhari, are you questioning Bukhari? So it is about time to take it easy, saying that it's not either or. I know there are people who are trying to attack the whole Sunnah and to reject the whole Sunnah, and then probably the whole Quran, if they can. I know that. I know there are people, but we should not be, We should not repeat the same mistake. Like fear of bid'ah, stop ijtihad, freeze Islam. And now fear of these people who are trying to demolish Islam altogether. So let's stick to the whole thing as is without even thinking. No, we can't. We can't think. And we should take the hadith with the Quran and then discuss the meaning of it. If it contradicts some essential pillars of Islam, like you come to convince me that the Prophet said, obey your ruler, even if he takes your money, even if he, I don't know, he abuse you, even if he torture you, you have to obey him. And I will never believe this. That contradicts a very essential part of Islam, that this deen is about justice. There is a verse in Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, everything is meant to achieve justice. And you tell me that the Prophet said, accept injustice? Accept the dhulm and the abuse? I could never accept this. And what is wrong with what is wrong with saying this hadith is not consistent with the foundations of Islam, and there is no way that the Rasul has said it. Now what went wrong in the middle, I don't know. Maybe somebody did not memorize very well. Something has happened, but then this cannot. Maybe that it was injected there. Because keep in mind that the work of the hadith, documentation of hadith, happened under totalitarian regimes. And the human effort is not immune to mistakes. They conducted scientific experiments. And you never get 100%. Very advanced tools, you measure with that, there is always a margin of error. That's what we teach students. There is always a margin of error. So it's a human effort. And it is about time to see if there is a hadith that has been causing problems, that has, like some groups are using it to commit atrocities in the name of Islam, that contradicts principles of Islam, it is about time to put it on the table. And that will take nothing out of Islam. I mean, I told you, 200 years, people lived and they did not have a book of hadith. They didn't. And they know their religion. So it's not like Islam, without the books of hadith, Islam is going to collapse. That's not true. And we're not saying books of hadith. We're saying that it is about time to first of all, to get rid of this idea that the Bukhari is like Quran. Anything in Bukhari is correct. It's like the Quran exactly. That's bad. That's very wrong. You know, always to have that distinction. Quran was preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reached us through tawatur, many people, through many people, through many people, etc. Hadith, there are different kinds, different categories. It's a human effort. It did not reach by tawatur. Only few hadith reached by tawatur. Tawatur means many people narrate the same thing from many people. And the chain goes like that. It's a large number of people to large number of people to large number of people. So most hadith, vast majority of hadith are hadith ahad. That somewhere in the chain, it was only one individual. And sometimes the chain is broken. So, a lot of hadith are very essential. Hadith of akhlaq. There are a lot of hadith that can motivate people to do good. There are a lot of hadith, but it's not every hadith. And we said even the Quran, there is no question about authenticity, but not every verse is valid, applicable in every context. That's not what Allah meant. By giving you full guidance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not tell us to open the Quran randomly and take any verse and apply it in any context. No, the context is important. Now, if that applies to the Quran, in which there is no question about authenticity, you don't want that to apply to the hadith? To say this hadith is, even if it is authentic, this hadith is not relevant for this context. It doesn't apply. So what's the problem here? But in the hadith, yes, there is an issue of authenticity. And I told you there are some major scholars. Inshallah, we do sometimes a full halaqa on this. Scholars, very prominent scholars, at the time of Bukhari and immediately after him, they rejected some of his hadith. Did not accept them. And we should stop thinking of Islam as something that is very fragile, that we are afraid that any even cold or anything is going to destroy Islam. Islam is much more solid than this. Centuries that Islam survived. I mean, just let people open their mind and start to revive this religion and get the parts of it that were really, that has faded, the part that is really inspiring and empowering. And it's an amazing religion if it is properly understood and properly implemented, and people take it seriously.
Jazakallah, Dr. Anushi. Inshallah, we will continue with the lecture next week. And inshallah, we'll have some updates from Brother Muhammad with Adam Center and Brother Nidham.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
Oh, yeah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.